artificial intelligence is not possible without knowledge representation. It's not possible. In our world, what we're talking about, in our vertical, in recruiting industry, this means if a machine cannot read, if it can't interpret, it can't make sense of the data, there's no possible way a machine is ever going to be able to source candidates. It's not going to be able to analyze. It's not going to be able to compare and shortlist and solve these jobs to be done.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Keenley, and welcome back to Becoming a Hiring Machine. This is the show dedicated to fixing recruitment by going beyond saying what needs to change and instead teaches you how to make that change. Today, we have an incredible mic drop episode ahead of us, but before we get into that, I just want to tell you a little bit about the show. Essentially, we have shows within the show. Some days we have interviews with industry thought leaders and others who are shaking up the space, while other days we cover things like trending topics, items that recruiters are talking about or will be very soon and what those mean for them. Every Tuesday, come by for a Tactical Tuesday episode where we go deep on how to do something that's going to help you drive better results in your day-to-day. Every now and then, we open it up for Q&A. Listeners can drop in questions that they'd like to hear us take on, so send those to us at podcast@loxo.co. And occasionally, like today, you hear a mic drop episode where Matt joins us to share something that he's been thinking about within the recruitment space and wants you to know. All right. So we all know AI in recruitment is all the rage right now. I mean, really anything AI is that's besides the point. But what does AI really mean? You see it slapped on a website, you see it slapped on a product, but like, what does it do? Is it really AI? Like, what do I need to know as a recruiter? And so what we often find is this is one of those types of things that falls into the new bucket, and new often brings about a fear of change or a sense of overwhelmment. And when this happens, status quo is what often remains, as it's what you know, it's what you're comfortable with. And so right now you're hearing a lot of the extreme versions of how to use AI in recruitment. Use ChatGPT, get a virtual assistant, insert like 5 other AI tools, and you'll never have to do any actual work. Like, that's not the reality of it. And that's what we're going to get into today. So Matt's going to unpack like AI in the recruitment space and go a level deeper to help you understand what do you really know or what should you be asking over the coming months and years ahead. So Matt, welcome back for the show.
Thanks, Sam. Looking forward to it. Can't wait.
Oh, I can't wait to listen to just you explain on all of this. So we're structuring this kind of in a good flow. Like, what is AI? Like, where's it coming from? What does it mean for us? We're going to go through a nice flow. So the first part that we'll get into is like, where are these AI solutions going to come from? Like, why are they coming about? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yep. So great question. I want to preface it as well as, why are we even talking about AI? Obviously, it's the buzz everywhere, but a lot of people don't know this, but we founded Loxo as a talent intelligence platform in 2012 for this. And AI and machine learning was a huge component of that. And we've been building that for a decade. And so we're extremely passionate about it. It's core to our DNA. We have a lot of experience and expertise as practitioners and from an entrepreneurial perspective. So we want to share that with everybody. And we're going to go really deep today, really, really deep. So, Sam's question around where are they going to come from and why? Everyone, it's fascinating. Everyone thinks they're going to come from startups in Silicon Valley, right? That's what everyone thinks. And I'm here to tell you that's not going to be the case. And I'm gonna back it up and explain why. A lot of people don't understand this, including we didn't understand it early on, but it's extremely, extremely expensive to execute and maintain artificial intelligence, extremely. But also the venture and institutional business model itself cannot support it from the unit economics. So for example, everyone knows, and the reason why AI is kind of had a renaissance lately is because of OpenAI's GPT. It costs $700,000 a day to run that, just to run and deliver it, right? The horsepower. And a lot of people are saying, well, wait a second, Matt, doesn't that mean it's perfect for venture? It sounds like it is because they'll throw a lot of money at it. But when you have to raise more capital every 18 months or so to justify your new valuations, the unit economics will never work. It's too expensive. You're not going to get the investors won't get an ROI back. Also, a lot of people don't realize this, but the number one reason in AI, we're talking about AI in recruiting today. And I think this will be fascinating for a lot of founders and investors and private equity people that are looking at AI and models across all of tech and SaaS. SaaS ultimately is a B2B business process software. And in recruiting and HR tech, that means you run somebody's business. And you can't just play with AI and machine learning tools because it's fun and it's for vanity. You have to drive business outcomes, right? So there's a massive amount of change management and compliance and software code and infrastructure required to do this, right? It takes decade plus and hundreds of millions of dollars to bring to market. So we haven't even talked about the AI yet, right? So before you can get to AI, before you can get to the fun part of machine learning, you have to first build business process software.
And that's insane to think about. Just, and yeah, like you say, it takes so much time. So when you see people just slapping AI on a product, like, is it really AI, or is it a little bit more of automation or something like that? But so every year, I feel like that you see these like new HR tech companies coming out of Y Combinator. So like, tell me a little bit about, well, what do you think? Are these going to start adopting it moving forward, or where's that going to go?
Yeah, and they will for sure. And I remember our co-founder Ilya and I talk a lot about this, and we're like, it's always been a competitive market, and there's always incredible companies and startups and amazingly talented entrepreneurs everywhere, and everyone's going for the same idea, right? Better talent faster, as Sam knows in the marketing space, is the mantra, right? But YC, for those who don't know, Y Combinator pump out some of the best startups anywhere, right? It's the best incubator of all time. But very few ever make it, very few. And the reason why is, again, the VC funded model. It's just difficult in general. But what's happening is HR tech's exploded. You see a lot of YC companies jump onto the HR tech bandwagon lately. And a lot of people think those startups are going to make it, but the unit economics don't make sense. We've seen it happen time and time again. They're at Series C or D. They're going to have fire sales and shut down. And we've just seen it happen over and over. So I personally believe that, yes, everyone's going to be trying to add some type of AI, but the time horizon doesn't work. And a lot of these HR tech companies that we have all seen, a lot of the analysts know about, the billion-dollar valuation companies, they're going to have a fire sale. They're either going to fizzle out or be acquired for a fire sale in the next few years. And we're going to see a lot of this consolidation in the market.
Interesting. Okay. So it's not going to be the YC route. What about the opposite side of the spectrum? The Corn Fairies, the Robert Halves, would they be jumping onto something like this?
So this is a new trend. And 5 to 7 years ago or so, I'd be on conversations with, and I won't share names, but some of the big titans in the recruiting staffing space, right? And their team would tell us they're exploring platforms, right? And it was build versus buy, a traditional build versus buy evaluation, but ultimately they're trying to learn and understand from vendors to go build their own, and smart decision at that time. But what happens is it's not going to come from the Robert Halves. It's not going to come from the Corn Fairies. And what happens is the reason why they did this is not because they're trying to build software for a competitive advantage. The reason why they're doing it is for their investors and their owners. Their multiples and the valuation multiples in a services business are really low. And in staffing and recruiting, it's a 0.6x multiple. That's one of the lowest revenue multiples in all of professional services. It's even lower than legal and consulting services firms. This is the reason why you've seen a lot of recruiting companies raise money, institutional money from private equity. And I feel horrible for the owners and the individuals involved in this, because it's not going to go well at all, because you're not opening up commercially to the open market. You can't compete with the open market. There really is no IP. And then they have to deal with the unit economics and sustaining and trying to invest in hiring more engineers and directors and VPs, and let alone try to pay for AI solutions. It's going to go very poorly, and their investors are going to have to write off a pretty massive check. It's not going to come from the professional recruitment firms.
So where's it going to come from?
Yeah, and that's the big question, right? And
Yeah.
so I can sit here in myopic, very biased point of view, but it could not be more excited for what we've done. And is Loxo going to be the one and only one? Of course not. Is Loxo going to be a massive player in this space? I 100% guarantee it and promise. We already see it. We're already going to show people we're one of the very few that have an actual, true AI, which we'll talk about the different use cases here in a second and what that actually means. But the other ones that I know for a fact will be in there are the incumbents. And so Clay Christensen fans here, incumbents are the ones that you typically get disrupted. I actually think that incumbents are at a really good advantage when it comes to this, because you have to have the infrastructure, the workflow systems, and that takes a decade or 2 decades to build, hundreds of millions of dollars, and it takes a long time. LinkedIn, of course, and they've acquired a bunch of companies over the years, BrightScore and different companies and they wouldn't have solved it right already if it was easy. This is not easy. It's not going to happen overnight. You have Google's try to attack this, a lot of companies, but LinkedIn will be in there. They'll have phenomenal AI solutions at some point. I won't get too far into some challenges they'll have with their own business model, but that's up to them, of course, and Microsoft, right? They'll figure it out, and they'll have some amazing AI solutions. I also think the incumbents, the other ones, the big ones, Workday, Oracle, even Success Factors, UKG, those ones, the big tech, HRIS, ATSs will have some. Even Greenhouse, I think Daniel Chait is incredible. I look up to him quite a bit actually, and think he's done a great job. And they'll have something good in different ways. And then also Indeed, I think some of the bigger job board players, they have so much cash. And in years ago, I don't know, was it Career Builder was acquired, I think by a staffing company. Monster, Dice, some of their valuations are in a tailspin, but Indeed's done really well. And they pump out cash, right? So I think Indeed will figure some things out, especially big job boards with the scale in different ways. So I think the probability of the companies pulling it off will actually be incumbents that are a certain size of scale, and they'll have to figure out if they can execute and evolve, because that part's not easy either. And some big, large corporate incumbents just don't have the entrepreneurial DNA to figure out how to bring new solutions to market, and that's usually startups. It's usually entrepreneurs, and so yeah, it'll be fun.
Okay, so the context has been laid out. Have a good foundation on the back end of it. So bringing it over to the recruiters listening to this, like, what do you think is going to happen if you're a recruiter today? How should you be preparing yourself for this so that you can future-proof your livelihood?
So this is also why it's so topical, is because now that GPT has brought AI so front and center, and you can see it, it's tangible. You can taste it, right? You literally can press automate, Copilot. It's going to draft up a job description or an outbound sequence. So it's here. It's here now, right? And so people are kind of panicking. But recruiters, if you're on the agency side, you're in a good spot. And the reason why we'll talk a bit about, but what AI is going to do, it's going to decentralize power from the big, in my opinion, the big professional recruiting organizations who used to have the resources, and the database used to matter before it became a commodity. And it's going to kind of decentralize that from the big to the medium, boutique, mid-market size. And that's the long tail of the market, right, of agencies.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the past, as you mentioned, some really good ones, Robert Half and Korn Ferries, they're not going away, but their dominance is going to become more difficult, and they're actually going to be at a competitive disadvantage, because it's now their Achilles heel. They're being dogmatic and relying on their own IP, and their own IP is clunky, it's slow, it's actually going to be behind, and it results in worse experiences, not only for their recruiters and consultants day to day, which is slower to deliver for their clients, but their clients are generally not going to have as nice of an experience. So there's actually a lot of value for, in my opinion, the future of recruiting is going to professional recruiting organizations are going to look more like a tech company, and they'll probably start to build some client facing portals and UIs to kind of improve their client experience, but they're not going to mess with the under the hood delivering automation. So that'll happen. The groups on the corporate side of the fence, though, I actually do think could be in trouble in some ways, and it depends on their role and what they're doing. But the recruiters that just post and pray are at the biggest risk by far. And so I hope people get prepared and get ahead of that and upskill and really force yourself to move up the value chain. What's really nice about this, though, is that the best recruiters are going to be elite at building relationships with exceptional talent. And that seems really obvious to most people listening to this call, but that's where you really get a lot of value, because the very best recruiters are naturally amazing at building relationships, and you get into the very best companies and you help the best companies go attract the very top talent. You build that reputation, and it goes with you to each company. And that's also why people pay a lot of money, right? PE and VC firms are even acquiring or spending a lot of money to get great recruiters for that exact reason, because they can go bring it for all of their portfolio companies. It just, over time, you build that, right? And that's just going to become more powerful multiplier effect in the years ahead.
Okay, that's promising. And for some, definitely something to think about. For others, is your in-house and what you should be doing. So getting into some specific use cases, like what's available right now with AI, which ones are going to be growing in the marketplace over the next couple of years, because AI is this all-encompassing box, this circle. But when you unpack it, there really are different types of AI that I think might be good to let's define those and then talk a little bit about each of them.
Yeah, this is fascinating because everyone lumps it all into one, right? Hey, we're an AI recruiting company. Okay, what's that mean? And then you're like, show me the demo. But at the end of the demo, you're like, I haven't seen one thing with AI yet, right? Uh, and it's just we hear that a lot. There's lots of companies out there. All due respect to everyone out there, but the use cases are pretty simple in recruiting tech. And what you do is you break down end to end what is the entire life cycle of recruitment. Recruitment is nuanced and different, and that's also important. But in general, you have generative AI, which is what everyone is thinking about, right? That's and to be fair, that's just a continuation of the state of the art NLP, so natural language models. And in fact, if anyone's familiar with Google's BERT, that came out in like 2019 when we started playing with it and putting it into production and across a lot of our services. So anything that's text based, text copy based, that's has viable applications for generative AI, and that's a huge part of it. That'll be in all SaaS applications, not just recruitment tech. Um, Another major one is automated sourcing, essentially AI sourcing. There's a lot of confusion here, primarily because of vendors, but also due to analysts and the market and just in general, right? But also because the maturity of the life cycle product maturity of AI and sourcing wasn't there yet. And a lot of the vendors that do a decent job were primarily, sourcing, matching, ranking on different things. And I'm not going to get too far into it for secret sauce reasons, but it wasn't there. A lot of it was Boolean based, and it's not true AI or machine learning. It's just literally building a Boolean string in the back end and returning results. And people wonder why it's not learning or improving or evolving. So there's a lot of use cases in the AI automated sourcing. That's the biggest one. That's the holy grail. That's the most complex and difficult. Ranking resumes and inbound applicants, that's also a similar use case that you would think, but it's very different application and approach. It's much easier. Most job requisitions, you might have, 50 to a couple hundred resume inbound applicants. It's trivial to rank them in order of best fit. Trivial. Internal mobility is on the corporate side is a huge opportunity, and that alone will be its an entire category. And there's certain companies in a big opportunity for incumbents, but also new entrants to really solve an important problem there for big companies. Where's the best source of a potential hire? It should be internal first, and help people go up their career path and find them, identify them, get the opportunity in front of them, and just help grow careers and organizations by upskilling and internal mobility. So that's a huge one. Screening. So inbound applicants, same thing, volume, but where AI will come into play is not just the screening element. So that's one application, but also conversational like chatbots, which is really high volume roles where it's just like, did you pass the background check? Are you available? Will you work for this hourly rate at this time and place? And, can you do a good job and show up? And, I'm playing that down a little bit, but you don't need to headhunt and recruit. They're applying. And so there's a lot of that can be automated, and it's also too expensive to do at scale. So lots of solutions will come out there. Final one, it's less about AI and it's more how it's built, and that goes around things you're starting to see around skills, taxonomies, and ontologies, and largely what make up knowledge graphs.
These are interesting, and I'm shaking my head / laughing when you're talking about that conversational chatbot just for the screening and people like AI is going to take my job. Think about LinkedIn Easy Apply. I think every recruiter wants to bang their head against the wall when they go through and see, 199 out of 200 of those applicants are just like, this person can click a button, but they're so far removed from being qualified. So that would just replace you having to screen that. You can insert that type of thing. So that's where it's like, how do you better utilize something that's at least a little bit educated or is able to pull some of those different insights together towards at least, making your job easier so you don't have to spend that time reviewing all of those types of items, but you can do the relationship development. You can do the other more important parts of your job. So as we've gotten into some of these different use cases, I mean, are there any that you want to go a little bit deeper on, or do we want to hit on like one of the final use cases that people aren't really thinking about with AI yet?
Just to add some context, because I think it's an opportunity for us to kind of really share with people in the market to think about it. So just a little more detail on some of them.
Yeah.
Is we already talked about generative AI. I think we beat that to death. Everyone gets it. But just think Copilot. Anytime you see text application inside your workflow, there's going to be some options for Copilot type of AI. And just keep in mind, that's again where a lot of the startups are jumping in. There's not a lot of competitive value there really, or differentiation from vendors. They might plug into OpenAI or Anthropic's API, and you're going to get to market quickly. That's going to evolve really fast, though. So I personally don't believe recruiters are going to be spending much time manually building, outbound engagement, follow up messaging, very, much further into the future. Sourcing. That one is really just about the efficacy of identifying the right match for every role and doing it a lot quicker, right? And so that's the speed to market. How can you find the right mutual candidate and then reach out to them? Again, that sounds obvious to recruiters, but it's not. And that's really where people spend the most time. It's the most complex by far. You got to build your own algorithms. There's a lot to that. And we've invested heavily, so we know for a fact. The outbound recruitment and candidate engagement is really about, having just like marketing, right, Sam? It's like, do you have the right message, the right time, the right place? What is it? The 5 Ps marketing is, price and all that. But AI is going to be able to do that just so much better. It's a better candidate experience. You deliver it really quickly, right? So that's going to have a massive impact on recruitment. Yeah, and that's really it. It just ultimately what's going to happen again is it will shine a very bright light on the best recruiters. You have a 10x engineers, you're going to have 10x recruiters, and it happens to be really smart, high acumen, high growth mindset. Do you have a big motor and you work hard, and are you great at building relationships, and the roles open up and you help connect and help individuals know why it's a good move for their career, right? So 10x recruiters are going to make a lot of money, be really sought after, and they're going to be great at headhunting, talent, being a relationship builder, and being a talent advisor. So they're going to win the day.
That's enticing. And I mean, when you think about even sales reps, it's like you have the sales reps that can take orders, but then you have the sales reps that are just consistently blowing quote out and everyone goes after them. And it's the same exact type of use case where those recruiters are, like you said, they're going to be rewarded well. They're going to be sought after. So it's exciting when you think about the upside, because there really haven't been that many big changes to the recruitment space over the last, I don't know, however couple of decades when you think about it, aside from like the introduction of the ATS or something along those lines. So for those who enjoy a little bit of change or shaking things up, this is one of those career defining opportunities that you'll look back on in a number of years and wonder what you did or didn't take advantage of.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Last use case. You have one that you don't think people are really thinking about often. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so I think it's important to back up. I'm opinionated, right, as a founder, but I've been in the space for a long time. Like I said, we live, breathe, and eat, sleep, and breathe this for all day, every day. 14 hours a day for a decade. And I think often what I look out at the landscape, a lot of the attention goes towards like from analysts, right? Analysts are larger than corporate. They'll talk about these huge AI companies, and they don't. Again, when you look at the platform, they don't have any AI. They don't have any solutions that actually matter. Now, generative AI, everyone rolls out, but still. And so what I think is really important, and why I can back this up, why it's not going to come from startups or early stage startups, while it's not going to come from professional staffing, and even some incumbents will struggle, is something that we went through and did, and I think is really important. And it's how AI works. And it's critical for people to understand this. It's how AI works in the first place. So knowledge graph. What is a knowledge graph? And so outside of the largest enterprise software heavyweights, including, so Google's built knowledge graphs, Microsoft, IBM, Amazon, Meta, right? For different approaches, but Loxo also did, and it's one of the only commercially available B2B knowledge graphs in production today. And so what happens is the majority of machine learning techniques in the recruiting marketplace are bottoms up machine learning, bottoms up, and that's GPT, that's NLP techniques, and they lack knowledge representation. Artificial intelligence is not possible without knowledge representation. It's not possible. So in our world, what we're talking about in our vertical, in recruiting industry, this means if a machine cannot read, if it can't interpret, it can't make sense of the data, there's no possible way a machine is ever going to be able to source candidates. It's not going to be able to analyze. It's not going to be able to compare and shortlist and solve these jobs to be done, matching the best candidate with more accuracy than an elite level human recruiter. So when people talk about AI and replacing recruiters and everyone panics, and you see a new startup raise $20 million in a seed round or Series A, don't panic. It takes a long time, decades to build this infrastructure. It took us 5 years to build this. So hopefully that makes sense. And how these are built, just to give some more context, is you take taxonomies, and there's a lot of analysts talk about this. The big companies, skill clouds, right? I think Oracle, Workdays are going after these. They're really smart. You have to. But it's somewhat similar to like power filters. If those of you who use sourcing tools, but it's so much more sophisticated at a massive scale with the infrastructure, the horsepower, the hardware, and that creates hierarchies for data, which then allows machines to learn, to give context, and have knowledge representation. So without those relationships and context, there's no learning. And that's why it goes back to my last point of a lot of people in that market say they have AI recruiting or sourcing tools. And a lot of vendors we compete with, they don't have AI. It's not true AI. They're running a Boolean string in the background, and that's not even machine learning. It's a very basic, simple version of, essentially you could do like linear regression techniques, right? So it's Boolean. You're automating Boolean. That's not AI. So anyway, food for thought for people to think about. But for all those reasons and everything we spoke about today, this is why I believe only a handful of companies are going to be able to truly have the ingredients and bring to market a revolutionary AI within recruitment. But it is going to happen, and there's a dozen companies that have it, that are pushing on it. And it's going to happen in the next couple of years, that you're going to start to see more and more of these solutions really reaching a scale and level of quality that will help more mass market adoption, help those 10x recruiters deliver for their clients and hiring managers.
I love it. This is exciting. I know this was a little dense for compared to what we normally do, but there's so much knowledge packed into here, so much to think about. I know I'm going to come back and listen to this probably as soon as this one goes live, but it makes you think about your current processes, what you're doing, what do you need to do to get ahead, and also what should you be thinking about and asking of your current workflow, your current processes, the tools, and everything else to get ahead. So this was great. This was incredibly helpful, inspiring for some recruiters to think about, hopefully motivational when you get down to it. So appreciate you joining as always and sharing these insights with us.
Yep.
So as we wrap, Becoming a Hiring Machine is a production of Loxo. You can find our show notes in the description of your favorite podcast streaming platform, as well as on our website, loxo.co/podcast. We do have video versions of this available on YouTube as well as on our website. And as we mentioned earlier, if you ever have questions, if you want to hear us take on something, if you want to hear Matt talk about different topics within recruitment, send that question over to us, podcast@loxo.co. So everyone, that's the show. That was an incredible mic drop episode with Matt. Until next time.